Radioactivity. We've all heard the science fiction horror stories, but what exactly is radioactivity? Well, it's the act of emitting radiation spontaneously. This happens when the nucleus of an atom is unstable and gives off energy to form a more stable configuration. Radioactive materials are extremely dangerous to the human body. They ionize chemicals within our body, which changes the way a cell works. And we're going to take a look at some of the most radioactive places on Earth on this episode of Super Freaky Science. At number 10, we have Mayak, Russia, an industrial complex that used to be one of the biggest plutonium production facilities in the Russian Federation. This place became very radioactive after the Fukushima Disaster. The Fukushima Disaster happened on September 29, 1957, but it was kept secret until the 1980s. More than 100 tons of radioactive waste were released by the explosion, which led to the contamination of the area, including a nearby water source which thousands of people relied on daily. More than 10,000 people were evacuated from the area, and hundreds died from the radioactive effects. This disaster was categorized as a level 6 accident on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale, which comes right after Chernobyl and Fukushima, but we'll talk about those two later in the video. Like our previous location, Sellafield was also a plutonium production facility located in the United Kingdom. Sellafield used to produce nuclear weapons for the United Kingdom's nuclear program during the Cold War. From the start of this program, many accidents occurred, causing 2/3 of the buildings to be classified as nuclear waste. As of 2019, activities at the site included nuclear fuel reprocessing, nuclear waste storage, and decommissioning. The worst part about this nuclear site is that over the decades, it has dumped an incredible amount of radioactive waste into the sea. This makes the Irish Sea the most radioactive sea in the world. This nuclear site, that covers an area of 2 square miles and is Europe's largest nuclear site, in addition to having the most diverse range of nuclear facilities in the world, is due to be fully decommissioned by 2120 at a cost of £121 billion. Moving up, we have the Goiano Institute of Radiotherapy, located in Goiás, Brazil. The Goiânia accident happened in 1987, and it's definitely the weirdest one on this list. It all began when a radiation therapy device was stolen from an abandoned hospital site in the city. The men who stole this abandoned machine thought it might have some scrap value. They began dismantling the equipment, but the kicker here is that if you tamper with the radiation device enough, it's going to start emitting radiation. This eventually led to them becoming super sick from the radiation. Giving up, they sold the scrap to another person, who invited other people into his house to see the blue shining light in the capsule, which appeared to be magical to them. But this blue shining light wasn't magical. In fact, it was blasting them with radiation. Later, more than 100,000 people were examined for radioactive contamination, resulting in 249 of them being contaminated. 4 deaths also occurred. Several hundred houses had to be demolished, and even personal items were seized and incinerated. This incident became known as one of the world's worst radiological incidents. A criminal organization from Calabria, Italy, called the 'Ndrangheta, have been involved in nuclear waste dumping for more than 40 years. A former member of the 'Ndrangheta, Francesco Fanti, accused them of sinking more than 30 ships in the unprotected waters of the Somalian coast. This led to investigations which found that not only did they sink the ships, but they also buried the radioactive waste on land. There are about 600 barrels of toxic nuclear waste, as well as nuclear hospital waste, waiting to be a huge environmental disaster. The United Nations Environment Program believes that the barrels which washed up to the Somalian coastline during the 2004 tsunami were dumped in the 1990s. Melusu, which takes the number 6 spot on our list, was neither a nuclear plant nor a power station, but actually a rich uranium source in modern-day Kyrgyzstan. During the Cold War, large amounts of uranium were excavated from the area by the Soviets. In 1968, uranium mining was halted and radioactive waste was buried, but significant amounts were left above the ground. Today, 36 waste dumps are scattered throughout the area, containing about 2 million cubic meters of unsecured radioactive mining waste. But these storage mechanisms are poorly designed and unstable. This makes Mosul the third most polluted place in the world. And on top of all that, the area is super prone to seismic activity, and any movement can disrupt the material or even cause it to fall into the nearby river, which is used by thousands of people as a water source. This is what happened in 1958 when an earthquake shook the area. Unfortunately, the authorities concealed the event from the public, and no medical follow-up took place. The Siberian Chemical Combine used to be a nuclear production facility for fissile weapon-grade products for the Soviet nuclear weapons program. When the Soviet Union fell in 1991, this site stopped the production of plutonium and uranium. Today, it is one of the largest storage sites in the world for low and intermediate level nuclear waste. This is nuclear waste that will remain radioactive on a shorter time scale than the major stuff like, say, nuclear fuel. The facility in Seversk holds more than 30 million cubic meters stored via deep well injection. It supplies Russia's enriched uranium fuel needs and enriches reprocessed uranium for foreign customers. The Hanford Site, located in Washington State in the US, is the fourth most radioactive place on Earth. This site was known by many other names, such as the Hanford Project and Hanford Engineer Works. It was an integral part in the US atomic bomb project. This site manufactured plutonium for the first nuclear bomb ever detonated, in addition to Fat Man, the bomb that was used in Nagasaki in 1945. As the Cold War continued, it supplied plutonium for most of America's 60,000 nuclear weapons. The weapon-producing reactors were decommissioned after the Cold War, but all these decades of manufacturing left behind more than 200,000 cubic meters of high-level radioactive waste. Most of the waste has been buried underground, but large areas of groundwater have been contaminated. In our number 3 spot, we have the Polygon, located in modern-day Kazakhstan. The Polygon was used by the Soviet Union as a testing site for their nuclear weapons during the Cold War. The site was chosen by Lavrentiy Beria, political head of the Soviet atomic bomb project, who falsely claimed that the place was uninhabited. More than 400 tests took place at the Polygon from 1949 until 1989. Unfortunately, they were not concerned about the effect it was having on the local people or the environment. The impact on people's health was hidden for many years until the site closed in 1999. Since it closed, the Polygon has become the most researched atomic testing site in the world. It is also the only one in the world open to the public. Almost all of us have heard at least once about the story of Chernobyl, but if you haven't, don't worry, we got you. The Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear accident that happened in April of 1986. This accident is considered to be the worst nuclear disaster in history. It was rated at 7, the maximum severity of the International Nuclear Event Scale. How did this accident occur? It started during a safety test on a RBMK-type nuclear reactor, which was mostly used throughout the Soviet Union. But this safety test wasn't so safe. A large amount of energy was released, which led to the rupture of the reactor in a highly destructive steam explosion. This was followed by an open-air reactor core fire that released airborne contamination for an entire 9 days. A 10-kilometer radius zone was created just 36 hours after the accident. 134 staff members and firemen were hospitalized with acute radiation syndrome, and 28 of them died. Unfortunately, due to the radiation, many cases of radiation-induced cancers have happened throughout the years. The first spot on our list goes to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan. This nuclear disaster is also rated at 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale. How did all of this start? Well, on March 2011, an earthquake and tsunami hit Japan. When the earthquake was detected, the active reactors automatically shut down their fission reactions. These existing safety features were overwhelmed by the earthquake, and then the tsunami hit. This is what caused the worst nuclear power plant disaster ever. The plant's 3 reactors leaked radioactive material into the Pacific Ocean. The nuclear plant is now completely shut down, but still, a lot of radioactive waste was spilled into the environment. It is estimated that it will take longer than 40 years to decommission the power plant completely. Thanks for tuning in, and if you want to get our latest content as it comes out, don't forget to subscribe.